It's a big happy birthday to Prince George today, who is turning 11. Kensington Palace released a black and white portrait of Prince George to mark the occasion.
A moment that stunned the entire world occurred when Prince George, who is third in line to the throne of the United Kingdom, did something that no one anticipated. In the humbling reality of a homeless shelter, the future king was only 10 years old when he made the transition from the polished glamour of royal life to the reality of being homeless. On this particular day, Prince George was captured performing an act of kindness that resonated far beyond the walls of the shelter. While the world frequently sees him in carefully orchestrated appearances at grand royal events, this particular day showed him for the first time performing an act of kindness. The only thing that surrounded him were trays of food, people who were in need, and his unwavering determination to make a difference. He was not surrounded by flashing cameras or royal guards. The sight of a young royal, dressed in a simple manner with his sleeves rolled up, serving meals and distributing supplies to those who were less fortunate, was not something that anyone anticipated. Prince George was able to turn heads, shatter expectations, and spark countless conversations about compassion, privilege, and the changing face of royalty, all within the span of a single morning. George's modest but sincere actions demonstrated that his family places a high value on kindness and humility. Despite the fact that he comes from a family that has been through a life of wealth and responsibility. But how did we get to this point in time? Why did Prince George find himself inside the kitchen of a homeless shelter, where he was serving food and shaking hands with people that society tends to forget? Could this have been a carefully planned royal engagement, or could it have been something more profound, something more human? The acts of charity that we witnessed were not the only ones. A young man who was destined to become the leader of a nation displayed a powerful display of empathy. In this narrative, we will take you behind the scenes of Prince George's visit to a homeless shelter, investigate the emotional responses that it elicited, and uncover the more profound message that lies behind this remarkable act of kindness. It was a moment that left everyone in the world speechless. It was a moment that made everyone say, "This is what they call true royalty." A chill hung in the air, cutting straight to the bone, and it was a cold and quiet winter morning in London. It was the kind of day that you would do anything to avoid. Although it was tucked away in a relatively unassuming part of the city, the shelter was bustling with activity. Serving food, organizing supplies, and providing warmth and support to those who were in the greatest need of it were all activities that were carried out by volunteers. The people who were waiting outside, many of whom were wrapped in weathered coats and wore scarves, found this shelter to be more than just a place to find a hot meal. It was also a haven and a reminder that kindness was still present in the world. For the staff, the day started off just like any other day. They stacked trays of sandwiches, prepared large pots of soup, and ensured that the tables were ready for guests. One thing that nobody anticipated, however, was that among their volunteers that morning would be a young boy who would one day become king. This was a face that was known all over the world. Quietly, the commotion started to occur. The employees of the shelter observed a peculiar arrival, which consisted of two black SUVs pulling up outside the shelter. As soon as the doors were opened, none other than Prince William, Princess Catherine, and their eldest son, Prince George, emerged from the building, much to the surprise of those who were watching. The fact that there were no ceremonial speeches and no photographers in attendance made it abundantly clear that this was not a formal royal visit. Instead, it was just a family walking in with their sleeves rolled up and ready to lend a helping hand. The arrival of Prince George, who was dressed in a plain jumper, jeans, and a determined expression, drew the attention of both the volunteers and the visitors who were present at the event. People stopped what they were doing in the middle of their work, unable to conceal their surprise. When all was said and done, this was a royal, one of the most famous children in the world, standing in the middle of a simple shelter. But the real moment of surprise came when George didn't hesitate to jump right into action. This was the biggest moment of surprise. After quickly washing his hands and donning an apron, he joined the other volunteers in the process of serving food while being closely monitored by the coordinators of the shelter. Prince George, who was positioned behind the counter and holding a ladle in his hand, served piping hot bowls of soup to every individual who came forward, including men, women, and children. It was a sight that was remarkably humbling for a child of his age and stature to see him with such unwavering concentration, his face lighting up each time he offered a warm smile and soft, "Here you go." There was no indication of unease or reluctance. All that was visible was a young boy who was determined to assist. The sight of the young royal reportedly caused one elderly man to pause before accepting his meal. He was taken aback by the sight of the royal. A stuttering voice uttered, You're Prince George." George smiled and simply responded, "It's nice to meet you," as if they were two friends meeting for the first time. He appeared unfazed by the situation. After some time had passed, the man referred to the experience as a moment of pure joy and couldn't help but be impressed by the prince's generosity. There was more to George than that. After the number of people waiting for food began to decrease, he turned his attention to assisting in the distribution of care packages that contained items such as warm socks, blankets, and toiletries. Taking the time to speak with each and every person he assisted, he inquired, "Do you have everything you deem necessary? For example, would you like some additional fruit?" The questions he asked were not rehearsed. Rather, they were genuine, heartfelt inquiries that reflected his upbringing and compassion. A number of witnesses remarked that George possessed qualities that are uncommonly associated with someone of his royal stature, such as humility and unassumingly. There was no hiding the admiration that the volunteers who worked alongside him felt for him. He did not behave in a manner befitting a prince, a worker later revealed. His demeanor was that of a young boy who was eager to lend a hand. Although he was courteous, focused, and even a little shy, he never failed to smile through it all. The experience ended up being life-changing for those who were staying at the shelter. During the process of accepting her meal from George, a single mother who was holding her toddler fell to her knees and began crying. She said, "It gives me hope to see someone so young and from such a privileged background take the time to care for another person." The information that Prince George was present at the shelter quickly spread throughout the community. A small group of people who were standing outside were able to capture photographs of the young royal while he was working, and the photographs quickly went viral. There was an outpouring of praise on social media, and news organizations were rushing to report on what was being referred to as a groundbreaking moment for the future king. One morning, Prince George did something that was truly remarkable. It was not because he was a member of the royal family that he did it. Rather, it was because he acted with genuine kindness and humility. This demonstrates that even the smallest acts of compassion can have the greatest impact, as demonstrated by the fact that his gesture, which was both simple and powerful, stunned everyone who witnessed it. Soon, people all over the world would be discussing the day that a young prince made the decision to serve, as well as the implications that this decision would have for the future of the monarchy. The atmosphere inside the shelter was one of both warmth and quiet struggle. It was a place where people went to find solace, support, and for some, a reason to continue to have hope. On this particular morning, nobody anticipated that their day would be improved not only by the food or the kind words of volunteers, but also by an unexpected visitor, Prince George, the future King of England. There was no one who could have predicted that this would happen. A straightforward jumper and jeans were the only garments that George wore as he stood behind the serving counter, wearing an apron that was tied around his waist. At this moment, his face, which was typically seen smiling at royal events or waving politely during formal engagements, was one of quiet focus. In this location, there was no ceremony, and there were no cameras that were directing a minute-by-minute performance. It was just a young boy of 10 years old with his sleeves rolled up and his hands ready to assist. From the moment George entered the shelter, his compassion was immediately apparent to everyone there. After attentively taking in the instructions that were provided by the staff, he didn't waste any time getting to work. Despite his royal upbringing, there was no hint of entitlement. Rather, he had a genuine desire to contribute. He served steaming bowls of soup and warm bread to those who had lined up, greeting each person with a polite hello or, "I hope you enjoy this." He did this while holding a large ladle in his hand. The moment that George extended a bowl of food to a young boy, who was roughly the same age as he was one of the most memorable moments. When they looked at each other, the distinction between privileged and disadvantaged circumstances was erased for a split second. "Are you Prince George, or are you someone else?" the young boy murmured, his eyes widening. George smiled shyly and nodded his head. What he said in response was, "Yes, but I'm just here to help." It was a straightforward sentence, but it carried the weight of a child who understood the importance of being kind. As the young boy smiled back, he brought his meal a little bit closer to him, as if the warmth of the moment was just as nourishing as the food itself. Following the conclusion of the meal service, George did not leave the table. He instead moved on to the next task, which was to assist in the organization of care packages. Warm socks, toothbrushes, blankets, and fresh fruit were among the essential items that were included in the bundles that the staff at the shelter had prepared. As he made his way around the room and handed out each package in turn, George carried the packages with great care and attention to detail. He made it a point to interact with the person who was in front of him at each and every occasion. "Would you require anything else at this time?" George inquired of an elderly man who was wrapped in a coat that was frayed. Astonished by the question, the man looked at the young boy with eyes that were filled with tears. In a low voice, he said, "You've already given me more than you could possibly know." George appeared to take the words to heart as he paused for a brief moment before offering a small smile that was warm and friendly. In spite of the passage of time, George did not waver in his determination to be successful. He spent time conversing with the people who came to the shelter, sitting next to them on chairs that had seen better days, as if they were long-lost friends. "How far away do you live?" a woman inquired, with a sense of wonder. In a light-hearted manner, George said, "I am in London with my family," before abruptly shifting the focus of the conversation back to her. "And what about you? What are your current circumstances like?" It was observed by witnesses that the young prince appeared to be completely at ease in this setting. He did not give off the impression of being awkward or out of place. Instead, he moved with the calm determination and quiet confidence of someone who understood the significance of what he was doing. He moved with a calm determination. Clearly, this was not about fulfilling a responsibility or maintaining a good public image. Rather, it was about compassion in its purest form. One of the volunteers expressed her surprise at the actions that George had taken. "There have been times when people have come to this location to offer assistance, but there was something about him that was unique. Neither did he consider these individuals to be statistics, nor strangers, that he considered them to be human beings." The presence of George had an effect that was felt throughout the entire room. It wasn't just the food or the care packages that were important to those who were receiving assistance. What was more important was the way that George made them feel like they were seen and valued. Being treated with dignity by a young royal was nothing short of extraordinary for a group of people who are given so little attention that they are frequently overlooked. Even after the tasks were finished, George took a moment to step back and observe the room with a quiet and thoughtful attitude. A supportive pat on the back was given to him by his father, Prince William, after he had whispered something to him. After some time had passed, it was disclosed that George had inquired about the means by which the shelter could be supported in the future, already considering the ways in which he could continue to assist. This was not a single act of charity that was performed. It was a demonstration of compassion and humility that revealed the character of a young boy who was being brought up to grasp the significance of his privilege and to put it to good use. During that particular day, George's actions did more than just provide meals and supplies. They brought hope, dignity, and a reminder that kindness is not dependent on one's social standing or financial standing. It was a moment that the volunteers, visitors, and even the royal entourage would never forget, and it was a moment that they witnessed Prince George take on the role of a humble servant. The actions he took were not only those of a young boy who made the decision to see, listen, and assist, but they were also those of a future king. The exemplifying act of generosity that Prince George performed did not appear out of nowhere. It was an unmistakable manifestation of the principles that his parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, had instilled in him for decades. Throughout their entire lives, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have made it a top priority to instill in their children a sense of empathy, humility, and an awareness of the world that exists beyond the confines of the palace. The actions that George took at the homeless shelter were a demonstration of the lessons that he has learnt from his parents' example and the unwavering commitment that they have shown to serving others. Since they were young children, Prince William and Princess Catherine have instilled in their children the value of giving back to the community. The couple has demonstrated to their children what it means to use their position to make a difference in the world, whether it be through their volunteering for charitable organizations, their public appearances, or their quiet efforts behind the scenes. The visit to the shelter was just one of many instances in which William and Catherine's parenting philosophy became the focal point of my attention. They are teaching George, along with his siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, that privilege is not something that should be recognized as a right, but rather as an opportunity to assist other people. When it comes to the lessons that he is teaching his children, Prince William in particular has been very forthcoming about them. As someone who was raised in the public eye and received instruction on the importance of service from his mother, Princess Diana, William is aware of the significance of setting an example for others to follow, to lead by example. He will never forget the impact that Diana's humanitarian work, which included her work with people who were homeless and those who were afflicted with AIDS, had on him. In the present day, William is carrying on her legacy by making certain that his own children comprehend the significance of compassion and connection. In addition, Princess Catherine has been significant in this regard. She is well known for her hands-on approach to parenting, and she has been quoted as saying that she attempts to teach her children to appreciate the world around them by reminding them that not everyone lives the same way that they do. Her children have been encouraged to find ways, no matter how big or how small, to make a difference in the world, and she has been very vocal about the significance of kindness. A reflection of the love, guidance, and values that she and William have instilled in George is the natural compassion that he possesses to this day. William and Catherine have made an effort to expose their children to the realities of life outside of the palace, which is a departure from the traditional royal practice. Not only are they preparing George to lead as a king, but they are also preparing him to lead with heart. This preparation is taking place through conversations, visits to charitable organizations, and small acts of giving. The deeds that Prince George performed at the shelter were not the result of a single incident. Rather, they were the culmination of years of careful parenting and a dedication to bringing up a new generation of royals who are aware of the significance of being kind. The future king demonstrated that compassion is the foundation of true leadership, a lesson that he learned from his parents, who were adamant about leaving the world in a better place. The actions that Prince George took at the homeless shelter sparked an overwhelming response from the general public in a short amount of time. As a result of the appearance of a few candid photographs and eyewitness accounts on the internet, what was initially a quiet and unpublicized visit became a topic of discussion all over the world. The picture of the young prince, who was wearing an apron, his sleeves rolled up, and he had a smile on his face, was quickly spreading like wildfire. He was serving meals and handing out care packages. The attention of social media platforms, news outlets, and commentators on royal affairs was swiftly drawn to what many people referred to as a moment of pure humanity from the future king. When hashtags such as Cheer Prince George Kindness and Future King with Heart began trending on Twitter within a matter of hours, the platform was flooded with expressions of admiration. The young royal was praised for his humility and compassion by people from all over the world, who shared their thoughts with one another. According to a post made by a user, "This is what leadership looks like." Another tweet that captured the emotions of many people was as follows: "To see a 10-year-old royal serving at a homeless shelter is both heartwarming and inspiring. Prince George demonstrated to us that kindness is universal, regardless of your background. This is the next generation of royalty, and I couldn't be more excited to witness it." A number of news organizations followed suit, publishing headlines such as "Prince George's act of kindness captures the world's heart" and "The future king breaks barriers with a humble gesture." Television commentators praised the manner in which the royal family is raising their children and emphasized how George's actions reflected a change in the monarchy. This particular moment was interpreted as a potent symbol of the ways in which the royal family is transforming in order to maintain a connection with the people they serve. Significant conversations were sparked as a result of the story, which went beyond the headlines and viral posts. Regardless of one's social standing, many people saw the visit as a much-needed reminder of the significance of giving back to the community. If a young boy of 10 years old is able to devote his time to helping those who are in need, then what is stopping the rest of us? Asked a prominent figure in the charitable sector during an interview. Additionally, George's visit brought awareness to the problem of homelessness, which resulted in an increase in the amount of money donated to homeless shelters and community initiatives. A number of organizations even reported an increase in the number of people signing up to volunteer in the days that followed the story. The act that Prince George performed was not just about charity. Rather, it was about hope for many people. The event provided a glimpse of a future king who is not detached from his people, but rather one who walks among them with compassion and humility. The world was reminded by this uncomplicated act of kindness from a young boy that leadership is about service, and that kindness has the ability to inspire and motivate people far beyond its immediate reach. Prince George's quiet act of compassion left a lasting impact, one that will be remembered as a defining moment in his journey towards becoming a leader who leads with heart. This is especially significant in this day and age, when viral stories almost always disappear in a short amount of time. The unexpected act of kindness that Prince George performed at the homeless shelter was more than just a fleeting moment. It was a powerful statement that resonated with people all over the world. In the span of a single morning, the future king demonstrated that true leadership does not begin with power or privilege, but rather with humility, empathy, and a willingness to serve the individuals around you. George's actions were surprisingly genuine, especially considering that he was a child who was brought up in the spotlight and was surrounded by tradition and expectations. The decision that he made to roll up his sleeves, serve meals, and speak with those who were in need revealed a side of the monarchy that the general public rarely sees, a side that is connected, compassionate, and humane. In spite of the fact that it was only for a single day, it was about making a genuine and observable difference in the lives of other people. It was not about titles or grand gestures. The influence of George's visit was felt far beyond the confines of the shelter where he was staying. This sparked conversations about the importance of teaching younger generations to give back, as well as about the privileges and kindnesses that people enjoy. It served as a timely reminder that no selfless act of compassion is insignificant, and that anyone, regardless of their social standing, is capable of making a difference in the world. In addition, this moment brought to light the impact that Prince William and Princess Catherine have had on their children, who are being brought up with the principles of empathy and community service. Not only are they molding George into a future king, but they are also molding him into a leader who realizes that greatness is measured by the way we treat those around us. This is because they are teaching George the significance of helping others. The act of kindness that Prince George performed has established a new benchmark for what the next generation of royalty is capable of becoming. His actions were a ray of hope in a world that is frequently divided by wealth and status. They demonstrated that kindness is, in fact, the most important legacy that anyone can leave behind. If a young boy of no more than 10 years old can motivate millions of people through a straightforward act of service, then perhaps each of us possesses the ability to do the same.